want me to drink? I'll have water. Fine choice, and I'll be paying with money. So some other arrangement. Well, whatever. How about... Wait, what? There's a comment to know for require vegetables, but lately the pets have been eating... But I just want water. No, I don't want to do this. Do that for me and you can... So I'm not even allowed to loiter. All I wanted was water. I didn't ask for meat. I didn't ask for ale. I just wanted some damn water.
Haha, filthy casual.
Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly, your one-stop shop for blind optimism. This week's show is going out a little bit early because I have some very important, very critical, high priority stuff going on. My birthday. I'm getting old. Yeah, he's getting old. So leave a happy birthday in the comments, some positive energy, and let's get right into the news, or in other words, this week's 9.1 PTR build. And what sort of vibe is coming from this patch as it nears its completion, maybe. Our first stop is with Domination Shards. I talked about this in an earlier video, but I'm gonna go a bit more in depth after a day or so of testing. In this week's build, gear that's compatible with Domination Shards began to show up outside of the upcoming raid, off of a vendor of all things. Now you might be thinking, oh, there goes all the raid exclusive gear, thanks Blizzard. They're hardly opening the floodgates here. Or are they? That's because reputation vendors in Korthia sell a piece of Domination gear, but only for a single gear slot. Plate and leather people are going to see gloves, while cloth and mail people will see belts. One of the weekly quests for Renown also awards Stygian Embers, the stuff used to upgrade Domination Shards, but you're only awarded like 10 per week, while regular raiders are gonna get a ton more. This seems to be a way for players outside of raid to at least have an opportunity to play with Domination Shards if they care to, because a single shard on its own is a bonus, but with the current tuning, it's not gonna change how you play in any meaningful way. However, sometime during Season 2, we will get more than a few rounds of Mythic Dungeon and Time Walker events which will award raid gear. It still seems pretty clear that raiders will benefit the most out of this gear thanks to the set bonuses, which at the moment are about as effective as a wet moldy noodle. The more casual folk, and by that I mean players outside of the big three like organized raids, dungeons, and PvP, will also benefit from this gear greatly because, well, this 239 piece is like the highest item level piece that they'll ever see outside of legendaries. From there, it's a choice for dungeon runners and especially arena PvPers to sacrifice item level for the benefits that shards give them. There's almost no question now that raid gear is the best for raiding, and that raiding is the best way to get raid gear. PvP gear seems to be best for PvP, but is that item level difference enough? Or will top arena players suggest sacrificing 1 or 2 slots for Domination gear? The biggest question probably lies with gear from Mythic Plus. It's plausible that one could gear faster here, but in the long term, the gear from the vault is limited to the dungeon loot table, which will not include Tazavesh. But with all of that said, the discourse over which endgame has the best gear is oftentimes more like a dick-waving contest between top players, as well as others who repeat top players' talking points and try to make it feel like it affects all of us. But the reality is that in the big middle band, there really won't be that much difference in the gear that we wear. We're just gonna have all these different options to play with. Back to not speculating though, one concern that I had before this week was, well, what happens if and when I want to swap out Shards of Domination? Blizzard seemed to answer that mighty quick with this, the Soulfire Chisel, a reusable item that just rips the shard out of gear with ease, has no rep requirement, and comes with a second chisel you can gift to mom. It's only 20 gold, buy it now. It's kind of a nice coincidence, right? Like I bring something up and they address it in the following week, like, hey Blizzard, how about player housing, huh? We'll see what happens next week. I can't wait. Moving on, the Covenant mission table got a bunch of updates and new rewards this week. Probably the best addition, experience tokens that you can now give to your followers, notably the new ones that you're going to get in this patch. There's this one, there's smaller ones too, so your followers will get up to speed much sooner and can at least help run lower level missions while your main squads take on bigger challenges and get stuff like this. Soul Cinders, baby. Wait. Wait, seriously, that's it? What the Seriously, these are very nice boosts for the mission table, and it takes us several steps closer towards it being a money-making machine. Now don't get me wrong, it is a bit of work getting all the followers between the Soulbinds linked to the Covenant campaign, and Renown and Torghast, but unlike the followers from Warlords, Legion, and BFA, once you have them, you can start sending them out for reward gathering straight away. I highly recommend investing into this for alts if you're looking for the extra coin. Next, we're going to take a look back. I sort of underreported loot changes coming to Tazavesh, the upcoming dungeon. I might not have too much to add to this, but I thought I should share my thoughts. Earlier, the loot table was introduced as Mythic 0 gear with an item level of 210 that can slowly be upgraded through Valor, just like the gear in Mythic Plus. Since then though, and as of this build, the loot changed. It's now got an item level of 226, which is the highest you can upgrade dungeon gear before you need to complete Mythic Keystone achievements. But that gear can no longer be upgraded. Now, this is consistent with the previous mega dungeons, Return to Karazhan and Operation Mechagon, but with Valor upgrades now in play, there was this expectation that players had, and this return to consistency has them pretty pissed off. I kinda get it, but consider this. Tazavesh is not part of the Mythic Plus rotation, meaning that we're not gonna see Tazavesh loot in the Great Vault. At no point was this ever assumed. Now, how many people would be happy to Valor grind so they can work on upping their Tazavesh gear all the way down from 210? Then maybe that 14,000 Valor that we have right now would come in handy. Now yeah, this could have been rectified by boosting the base item level to 226 and make the gear upgradable. That was probably considered before coming to this conclusion. So the question is, what's the point of Tazavesh for the big bad dungeon people? It seems like the answer is with hard modes. Just like Mechagon, there's going to be a hard mode of Tazavesh. If it follows the same pattern, the loot is going to be pretty much the same throughout the dungeon until its completion, and then there's probably going to be like an extra piece of awesome loot, or a mount, or an achievement, or other fancy stuff to lure even well-geared players to give it a crack. Part of me is pretty okay with this. It means that outside of hard modes, I'm not going to feel compelled to farm this dungeon every single week in the hopes of getting the gear that I want, so I can upgrade that to whatever I want it to be before the next season when I want to do it all over again, only this time I can wait for gear to appear in the vault. But how about you? What do you think about this change? I would love to hear your thoughts. Over in nearby Mythic Plus world, a bit of tuning has begun on the new anima powers. For example, the Thorns aura that I talked about last week got a sizable nerf, which was totally understandable. This would have strongly encouraged a meta where kiting wasn't even encouraged anymore, and instead tanks stood their ground like tanks. Hey. Seriously though, it really was a bit too much tank throughput, so that was toned down. Meanwhile, the bolstering affix got a buff to its duration, so it's going to be interesting to see teams dragging a handful of mobs over to a boss like it's a mini prideful. As we get really close to release, I'm going to talk more about the fine tuning, because after all, I put you through enough of a roller coaster of emotion with features. Not everyone should bear the weight of seeing the ups and downs of class tuning of all things. This build also solidified the use of score as the measuring stick for all things Mythic Plus. This chart from Wowhead details the score requirements to meet different season achievements and what Valor upgrades are made available. This gives me yet another chance to revisit Mythic Plus score, and today I want to take a few minutes to try and simulate not how time consuming or hard or easy the journey to Keystone Master will be, but a more or less realistic scenario. And seriously, prepare yourself. We're gonna slide on over to Mr. Spreadsheet over here, where you can see a simulated look at a very first week of Season 2, which happens to be a fortified week, where this player ran a respectable 6 dungeons. And for the sake of argument, we'll assume that they always run a different dungeon. This person and their team started together with a +2, smashed that, and then got to a +4, and then into a 5, and then a 7, but they didn't time it, so they ran someone else's 7. They beat that, and then timed an 8. The estimated score at the end of that is a respectable 300 and something. This chart reflects all the dungeons not run with a value of 1, and that 1 key was not timed, resulting in a small reduction of points. Moving on to next week, we're on a tyrannical week, but the team is picking up where they left off, starting with an 8. They clear the 8, they move on to time a 9 and a 10, but then fail every single 11 key among the team after that. It's a real bummer. Notice how the chart is lined up though. The higher completed keys are on the left and the lower completed keys are on the right, including the Theater of Pain and Plaguefall that wasn't run at all in the previous week. It's just a coincidence that all the keys run happen to be higher this this week than the last. Right now, the record reflects 5 missed keys from this week and keys from last week, giving us a score of a bit over 1,000. That gets us the Keystone Explorer achievement, which today would not be possible because we missed time on a bunch of keys. And timing is everything. Get it? the double? Okay. I hope you're following along so far, because now we're going to factor in some aberrant behavior. Let's say it's a new week and this player breaks off from their team and decides, you know what, there are people offering keys on the pre-made group tool and all we need to do is get completion, because that counts towards score 2. He targets Theater of Pain and Plaguefall, the dungeons that he didn't run previously, and manages to get 14s on both of these dungeons, ensuring that he gets something really nice from the vault next week and a lot of score, resulting in numbers sort of like this. Halls of Atonement and Mists of Tyrna Scythe are usually considered the easier dungeons, so let's say he happens to get into 14s of those as well. Now, did all this come off as confusing and difficult to follow? Yeah, probably, but this example behavior is what I would consider a reasonable scenario of natural mythic progression outside of the whole group building aspect. The spreadsheet does not reflect someone who would be considered all that successful at timing keys, as they are getting into them. But the point is that they're constantly building up their score. I'm probably exaggerating that someone is so likely to get into 14s, even if the intention isn't to time, but here's the takeaway. Out of the 16 runs that were on this person's record, the vast majority of them aren't even timed. That means while this person was eligible to get gear from the vault, only 5 of these dungeons would have counted towards achievements in the current patch 9.0. He's nowhere near Keystone Explorer, let alone Keystone Conqueror, but in 9.1 he meets that score requirement. I know I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid on this, but I've successfully revived my motivation to do Mythic Plus, just not in this season. I feel like Keystone Master is in sight because at the moment I can fail my way there. But my question for you folks is, do you think it's okay that not timing a key still counts a lot towards Keystone Master? Should the penalty for not timing be higher, or should the penalty just be removed and just let the plus 20 achievements, with the teleports and all that, be the real goal for Mythic Plus people, since those achievements require timing the dungeon? And now I want to talk more broadly about patch 9.1 as we inch closer to its release. And the World of Warcraft reminds everyone, including the Blizzard team, that you know what, to be the top MMO, maybe you should just keep releasing content. I'm scared that what I'm about to say right now is going to age like milk, but 9.1 is absolutely massive. Not because there are 10 zones, 5 dungeons, 2 raids, and a partridge in a pear tree, but because of the overhauls being done with respect to raiders and dungeon people and PvPers and players who play outside of those. It doesn't necessarily feel like there are winners and losers in 9.1, but more like winners and winnerers. The biggest winner, I think, the casual game. Solo content. It's stuff that everyone's going to be participating in, but there's a much more meaningful long-term game for the more casual-minded players. The pendulum swung hard in this direction, with really beefy weekly content in the Covenant Assaults and the Maw events and the weekly activity quest in Korthia that showers you with stuff. Remember in 9.0 we had to go to the Maw and then click on a couple of souls and then bounce? That was okay, but it was pretty boring, and more so because it felt required to stay caught up on Renown. Now we have a different kind of quest that's required, but this time it asks you to complete daily content, or to find treasures, or to do dailies, or to kill rares, or to do the assaults that I mentioned, and so on and so forth until satisfied. You can grind all that stuff up in about an hour, or you can take your time throughout the week. The casual content has a long tail, with farming for reputation and currency to upgrade gear to almost heroic grade level, far better than the Covenant sets in 9.0, which were sorta cool, but they were pretty whipped. There are cosmetics and mounts and pets and opportunities for gold, and all of this bleeds back to what should hopefully be a renewed vigor in farming up the old content, powering up the Covenant Sanctum, and trading anima for rewards. In fact, the overall anima income is going to at least double in this patch. When it comes to endgame gearing, again, it's more like a dick measuring contest of which game mode makes gear that sims the highest. PvP gear is pretty much off in its own world at this point, and concerns there lie more with how the team will react to brackets and participation, now that PvP won't be the meta way to gear in 9.1. We can consider Mythic Plus to be the least winning. Raiders get domination gear and sets, along with a higher maximum item level thanks to the last 2 bosses in Sanctum of Domination. It creates a scenario where in order to reach the highest keys, like beyond 20s or so, the only path there lies with farming the last 2 bosses in the Mythic Raid for whatever they drop, now that PvP gearing is no longer an option for dungeon people. Of course, despite how valid this criticism is and how loud someone can be on social media, they still make up an incredibly small fraction of players. A while back, I did share my thoughts and concerns that, maybe having this difference in item level in the raid isn't so great, so don't say I didn't try. With a new raid and mega dungeon, the overhauls to PvP gearing, the road to Keystone Master, and customizable set bonuses in the upcoming raid, additions to Torghast, which wasn't really updated this week by the way, and all the outdoor content, there's a ton for players to enjoy. There are chips in the armor, like the possibility or the likelihood of having to recraft legendaries. Maybe we'll see an answer to that. There's still unknowns to be resolved while balance tuning happens over the next few builds, but I, like many, am getting freaking restless, and that's why I'm taking a day off, so that's the show. For the next few weeks, I'm going to be hard at work developing guides specifically for patch 9.1 based on everything that we've learned from testing, so there might be fewer videos coming out before I shower you with knowledge. I'm very excited to see how players receive the patch whenever the heck that comes in, and I hope that I'm on the right side of history when I say that 9.1 is positioned to be a very successful patch, with design philosophies that really should have been in the expansion's launch. I do hope that despite the wait for the patch, you continue to support the channel by liking the video and dropping by over on Twitch as I do some testing or anima farming or maybe a bit of Project 14 on the side that's still on its way. A big thanks to the very generous supporters who subscribe to the Twitch channel, the wonderful patrons, and to you and Michael for making it to the end. Have a great weekend, folks. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.